So Hume says that he's part of a new uh, school or movement in philosophy at his time. He's writing in the mid 1700s, the 18th century. A new school of philosophy that's grown up in the British Isles, and that he says is characterized by empiricism, and that he is an empiricist. And what does it mean to be an empiricist? To be an empiricist is, I gave you that earlier video that I did on trying to define empiricism, and in a way, being an empiricist is to reject Descartes, or reject anybody who claims that we have certain innate ideas. For instance, I believe that such an idea would be, for Descartes, would be his idea of God. To be an empiricist means to believe that all of our ideas, all the contents of our mind, come from our experiences, and those experiences can, of course, be what seem to be our experiences of the external world, and they can be interior experiences of our own minds and our own feelings as well. But any idea we have is based upon some experience, and any idea that's not based upon an experience is, well, what is it? I don't know, but if any such idea would be illegitimate if it's not based, if we can't find out where it came from, we can't really say that it's based on anything. Looking for the right quote here. He says on page 3 in the second paragraph, or the first paragraph, and when he suspects, referring to himself, that any philosophical term has no idea annexed to it, as is too common, he always asks from what impression that idea is derived, and if no impression can be produced, he concludes that the term is altogether insignificant. That is, if there are any philosophical concepts floating around that cannot be connected with specific experiences, if we can't show how we derive those concepts from particular experiences, then we're going to toss them out, because then we don't even know what they're based on or what they're saying, or what they mean, so they can't be of any use. But it is this notion of impression. I think that that is a way. It's a very important distinction. The difference between an idea and an impression, which is also something I talked about. So what we should know is that there's this that all of our experiences really are experiences of ideas in a way. It's just that the ones that we take to be our primary impressions of the world that have gotten through our senses, which is of course a metaphysical claim that we can't support, right? But we're disposed to think it. That those are what he calls impressions, and then our memories of those things, or our use of those primary ideas, primary impressions and imagination, or what he calls ideas. But the only difference between them is that impressions tend to be stronger and more lively, and ideas weaker and less lively. In any case, there's no real way of telling between them except that we seem to know. He says on page 2, impressions, therefore, are our lively and strong perceptions. Ideas are the fainter and weaker. This distinction is evident as that betwixt feeling and thinking. That is, he believes that we just know. Their claim there is self-evidence, I guess, but that just shows that maybe there's a little dogmatism in there, because there's really no way to explain the difference between an impression and an idea, and that's the fateful consequence part of skepticism. But in any case, what he wants to do, I think, the major point of this abstract show is to apply that doctrine of empiricism to our notions of cause and effect. And our notion of cause and effect is just the idea that one thing causes another, and he's got this famous example of the billiard ball. Let's describe that on page 3. He says, here is a billiard ball lying on the table, and another ball moving towards it with rapidity. They strike, and the ball, which was formerly at rest, now acquires a motion. This is as perfect an instant of the relation of cause and effect as any which we know, either by sensation or reflection. Let us therefore examine it. So we have this notion of one ball hitting another and causing it to be in motion. And what he really asks himself is, if that's our sort of one of our clearest examples of a cause and effect relationship, the one billiard ball causing the motion of another, then what ideas and experiences that are actually based on? And one of the things we should say right away is that the idea of cause is not part of our experience. That is, we never see anything cause another. Strictly speaking, we infer on the basis, perhaps, of what we see that one thing has caused another. But we don't see something cause another. What do we actually see? It is evident that the two balls touched one another before the motion was communicated, and that there was no interval betwixt the shock and the motion. Contiguity in time and place is therefore a requisite circumstance to the operation of all causes. It is evident likewise that the motion which was the cause is prior to the motion which was the effect. Priority in time is therefore another requisite circumstance in every cause. But this is not all. Let us try any other balls of the same kind in a like situation, and we shall always find that the impulse of the one produces motion in the other. Here, therefore, is a third circumstance, that of a constant conjunction betwixt the cause and effect. Every object like the cause produces always some object like the effect. Beyond these three circumstances of contiguity, priority, and constant conjunction, I can discover nothing in this cause. So, we say that one thing causes another, but on what basis do we say it? Well, that the two things are in contiguity, that is, they are near each other in time and space. That the one thing precedes, priority, the other in time. And moreover, that there's constant conjunction, that is, we see this happen repeatedly, that these two things, let's say the two things being the one ball hitting in the other, the one at rest, and the one at rest being now in motion. Let's say event A being the striking of the two balls, event B being the ball that was at rest now rolling across the table, skidding across the table, whichever. That we observe the constant conjunction of these two events. Now, on the basis of these three things, we then conclude that the one thing, the ball in motion striking the one at rest, caused the other thing, the one at rest now being in motion. And that our entire proof for that is, of course, in those experiences we have. Again, contiguity, priority, and constant conjunction. So he says at the bottom of page 3, this is the case when both the cause and effect are present to the senses. Let us now see upon what our inference is founded, that is, our inference that the one thing caused another. When we conclude from the one that the other has existed or will exist, that is, we conclude from event A, which we've seen precede event B in the past, we conclude just from looking at event A that B will happen. That will be our inference. Suppose I see a ball moving in a straight line towards another. I immediately conclude that they will shock and that the second will be in motion. This is the inference from cause to effect, and of this nature are all our reasonings in the conduct of life. On this is founded all our belief in history, and from hence is derived all philosophy, excepting only geometry and arithmetic. If we can explain the inference from the shock of two balls, we shall be able to account for this operation of the mind in all instances. Were a man such as Adam created in the full vigor of understanding without experience, he would never be able to infer motion in the second ball from the motion and impulse of the first. It is not anything that reason sees in the cause which makes us infer the effect. That is, imagine that somebody who had no experience of billiard balls, how they move when they strike each other, were to observe the one billiard ball heading towards the other. There would be no way, simply by reasoning through the matter, that he would be able to, or she would be able to anticipate the movement of the second ball having been struck. That there's no there's no necessary connection that reason can find between the one thing and the other. That is, that you have to actually see how the things work out to anticipate. But once one's seen similar things happening with billiard balls and such, what is the reasoning from having seen several instances of similar things happen? He says in the middle of page 4, it would have been necessary, therefore, for Adam to have had experience of the effect which followed upon the impulse of these two balls. He must have seen in several instances that when the one ball struck upon the other, the second always acquired motion. If he had seen a sufficient number of instances of this kind, whenever he saw the one ball moving towards the other, he would always conclude without hesitation that the second would acquire motion. his understanding would anticipate his sight and form a conclusion suitable to his past experiences. It follows then that all reasonings concerning cause and effect are founded on experience, and that all reasonings from experience are founded on the supposition that the course of nature will continue uniformly the same. That is, to be able to anticipate the second ball moving without seeing it actually move, but seeing the one ball heading towards it. What we are assuming is that the future will be like the past. The course of nature will be conformable, will continue uniformly the same. But the way things happened in the past are the way things are going to happen in the future. And we absolutely, crucially have to assume that if we're going to come to the conclusion that the same thing will happen as a result of the same preceding thing happening. And then he asks, what is that based on? That is, what is that presupposition that the course of nature will continue uniformly the same based upon? That is, can we establish that? That the future will be like the past? That things, generally speaking, in the future will happen in the same ways that they happened in the past? He says on the top of page 5, this is a point which can admit of no proof at all, and which we take for granted without any proof. Now, at this point, one may say, well, if I believe in self-evident first principles, this may be one of them. That is, that the future will, in the general laws of nature and the way things behave in general, the future will be like the past. And I just consider that a given. Hume seems to be saying, you consider a given, but it's the kind of thing that really demands proof. It's not self-evident that the future will be like the past. That's not something that you can reasonably say is a self-evident truth. So why do I believe it then? He continues at the top of page 5. We are determined by custom alone, to suppose the future conformable to the past. When I see a billiard ball moving towards another, my mind is immediately carried by habit to the usual effect, and anticipates my sight, that is what I will see, by conceiving the second ball in motion. There is nothing in these objects, abstractly considered and independent of experience, which leads me to form any such conclusion. It's custom. It's belief. It's habit. It's the notion that whether or not things in the future will conform to the way they happened in the past, I will expect them to, because I've been habituated, I've been accustomed to the world being such a way. I think it's a very important point, because what he's saying basically is that the only proof, the only base of this principle that the future will be like the past, that nature will continue to be like it was in the past, that the only thing supporting that is a psychological condition, not any kind of aspect of reality.